Hey, beautiful souls and creative minds. Welcome to The Artist Stoop, the podcast where we turn the art world into your personal playground. I'm Jillian Zapata, your host, and I can't wait to dive into the art world with you. Each episode will be kicking it with an incredible artist, unraveling their stories and turning the spotlight on the magic that happens beyond the brush. Get ready to discover new perspectives, forge connections, and immerse yourself one captivating conversation at a time. So grab your favorite beverage, maybe a sketchbook, and let's jump into the kaleidoscope of creativity together. This is The Artist Stoop, where art isn't just a thing you see, it's an experience you feel. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Artist Stoop. Today, we're diving into the captivating world of Cori Godfrey, a German-born artist whose journey led her to Dallas, Texas, where she's been a dynamic force in the arts community for over 18 years. Cori's work is inspired by dreams and memories, and it spans across 2D, 3D, and immersive installations. Her work explores themes like female sexuality and introspection. Beyond her art, Cori actively shapes the Dallas art scene through her role at Aurora, advocating for local and international artists. Join us today as we uncover the many, many layers of Cori's creative world. So welcome to the podcast today, Cori.
Thank you so much, Jillian. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I am really excited to have you on because I've never met you, but I think we know people who know. It's like, 7 ways to become vegan. And let's see, how did I find you? How was my 7 ways to become vegan on this? I know Melissa Ellis. Melissa Ellis posted something about being at Kettle Art with her friend Annie Griffith, I think that's her name. Yes. And then in that post, I saw you post something, and then I went down this journey rabbit hole of clicking on people's stories, and then I saw you and your work, and I saw it, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then when I clicked on it and I saw what it was, I was like, I have to talk to her. Who is she? I need to know her. And so now here we are.
Here we are. Yes, that's great. I'm so glad you went down that rabbit hole to find me, and then now we're talking.
So what initially intrigued me about your work is that you use fibers. Like, you have these cool portraits, and I thought it was like legit painting, and then when I zoomed in and I said, that's yarn. That's fiber art works and everything. And so you were showing at Kettle Art, correct? Like, I have that right.
Yes, yeah. Correct. I showed there in March through April.
Nice. Yeah. So let's just dive into this, because I think that it's really interesting. I think more in the last couple years, I am seeing more and more fiber arts where people are using yarn and tapestry style things and fabric to create their art pieces. It's like we're going away from just using painting as a medium. So how did you come to paint with yarn, I guess, is the best way to put it?
Yeah, so I also want to agree with you. I'm seeing it more and more. Fibers are at the forefront and they're taking over, and I love that so much. I don't know, the way I got into fibers, I would say I was going on this whole quest to experiment with every craft material that existed. Thinking back to my childhood, that was something I loved doing. Is just like every craft, like anything I can do and anything I could get my hands on, and get chaotic with. In the 80s, we were allowed to do that while our parents were in the other rooms or whatever, not watching us. So we had that element of play. And so I've always been really fascinated and obsessed with craft materials. But it wasn't until I saw like a kid's yarn art, like string art is what they would say of a Tigger. In particular, was like this Tigger yarn piece. And I was like, that's cool. And so I started messing around with it, and that's kind of how I fell into it. In conjunction with that, I had a dream because I was thinking about this Tigger piece. I had a dream about um, what I saw in my brain was like two female subjects, like a finished piece completely done in yarn. And I did that piece in college at UNT like 20 years ago or so. And that's how it all started.
I that's really cool to me because the fact that you had a dream about it, you saw it complete, and you're like, I just got it. You just, it's almost like you know what to do. I've had something similar where but it was painting brightly colored fruit, which was never a subject matter of mine. I dreamt it, I saw it, and then I came out of my dream, and like a week later, because I was sick, I was like, yep, I know what I need to do. I needed to paint it, and I need to get it out of me. So, and then that led into a whole collection of whatnot. So you went to UNT. So you actually went to art school.
Yeah, I went to art school. I started in 2000 and it took me a minute to get to, my finishing time at 2008, but there's a lot of stuff that happened in between and all that how life goes.
Life
So yeah, I
happens.
graduated in 2008, but I mean, I just at that point had so much experience delving into yarn and creating these yarn portraits. And not only did I dream about yarn in those early days, I dreamt about macaroni pornography. So I ventured in that. I used like glitter nail polish in all of my oil painting classes. And I always did things that were like not necessarily what I was supposed to. Like in drawing, I did painting. In my painting courses, I did macaroni and then yarn really a lot. I was very different than everybody else there at the time. At the time it was like majority students focused in photorealism, which is fantastic and beautiful and amazing. But I definitely felt like an outsider in my classes, and I appreciate that looking back. Like I'm so glad I was different from the mix. But everybody's so talented in their own way. It's just interesting to like feed off of everybody else's energy. And when everyone is so laser focused on one subject, I'm sitting here like, am I doing the right thing? I don't know. But when I reflect back on it a million years later, like I'm a senior citizen now, so I've had a lot of time to reflect. And I'm so appreciative of what I did during that time in those young years when your brain is naive. Like you're in college, you don't know what's going on, and you're trying to learn what you're doing. And I'm thankful that I took the course I did, and I wasn't like following the footsteps of my peers.
I think that's I think that's important because that means that you also kind of knew who you were, and in a sense, like you probably were like at the time, like, I don't know who I am. This just feels right. I'm gonna do my own thing. But if we think back, like it just in context, like even when I was like in high school, art classes and whatnot, like when I graduated, there was a time when um in order to be considered a fine artist, you had to paint in oils, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that using any type of fiber art, macaroni, whatever, it was kind of considered kitsch and not fine art. But now, like you said, like we're seeing all of these different elements being used. So it's like, and how I see it is you're way ahead of your time.
It could be. I mean, I don't know. It could very well be. I even did. I the thing is, I used to do like very more so full frontal erotic work in college. And that was another aspect that was very different from my peers. I made, I remember I made a Lego penis for one of my painting classes in my drawing and painting courses. And, I have like a level of humor that I'm seeking. I'm always seeking
Yeah.
like, not like a shock factor, or the shock value doesn't appeal to me, but I always want to like relate to my humor. Like I don't know, I try to be I laugh at my own jokes, we'll just say that. Like I
So do
like
I.
my humor. Yeah. And not everybody likes it. That's fine. We're all welcome to our own um choices on what we find funny or whatever. But I don't know. I just think I always try to bring in that level of humor and shock value against the photorealism that I'm immersed in, you know? So it was just fun. Now, so like, yeah, I was doing like, at the time I was pulling a lot of my source material from old 1970s Playboy and Penthouse magazines. And so we're talking like, yeah, full frontal scenes here. And as I've gotten older, it's been more like alluding to the eroticism there, not necessarily like in your face, but like it's still there. It's like hiding in there. Can you find it situation?
Yeah, you know what? Okay, so my brain is going so many ideas running through my head. But in context and if you look throughout history, there there's been that in art. All the way back to the beginning of art, there's always the nude body, whatever. And actually, the nude body, the woman's body, is always been my subject matter. So I totally get it. I'm there with you. I can, see, the aspect of it because I remember when I started painting and I was doing these like really explicit, I guess you would call it explicit photos and drawings of these
Hmm.
women and having that shock value. And I think I was also in my early 20s when I was doing it. It's just like, okay, how are people going to react to it? How are they not? I get it's funny, but it's also art. Like, are people judging me? But this is really what I want to paint, And so I get it. But I think at the end of the day, art is supposed to have that shock factor.
I think so too. And like, it's not necessarily funny. There's so much beauty and power in it as
Mhm.
well. And beauty and power in the female body and female sexuality that I wanted to,
Yes.
portray. And, um, you know, I think I fell upon these magazines and it was a really interesting idea because at the time I couldn't just say, I was not allowed to just say in my artist statement, I had a dream about it. My professors really pushed me to be like, okay, so why'd you have that dream? So why? Asking all those questions like, okay, what else about it? Like, you can't just say you had a dream about it. There's got to be more to it. And I realized like maybe I really did relate to like a lot of feminist beliefs and I do relate to that. And so at the time, during all of this exploration in college, when I was forced to create an artist statement, I couldn't just say I had a dream about it. I was like, okay, maybe by using these images in these magazines, I'm taking the images back, to these women that are the subject matter by using these materials that are associated with them, such as yarn. So I think that was important for me to be pushed in that way, as annoying as it was. I appreciate being pushed to create a statement. I can't just write, this is from my dream on on anything. So, but I think it really made me think like, yes, I am really focusing on these subject matters and bringing the strength and showing the power that these women have that are in these images. And
Yeah.
then I started doing, you know, self-portraits in a similar light, nude self-portraits of myself. And that was pretty intense for me because, we all have our own feelings about ourselves and our bodies. And so
Yeah.
putting myself in that light with erotic, body language and faces, and putting that out there to the world to see and people buying those works is always really weird for me to think on, but I think that was like really important for me to go through that and help myself become more comfortable in my own personal body and sexuality.
I did the same thing. I have a whole collection. It's called Fem Bounty, and it was so I painted the brightly colored fruits. I had that dream
Hmm.
about the fruit. And then I was like, okay, well, how do I incorporate the woman's body into this and whatnot? So then I had thought about, okay, well, what does the fruit represent? What is different types of fruit represented throughout history and like the double meaning, the innuendos, whether in ancient in history, or even now in modern times with emojis and all of that. And because I had the images in my head of what I wanted these portraits to, and I was by myself, I was freshly divorced, and so I photographed myself in these certain positions, pretending to like to hold the bowl, with my camera on a timer, just so I could get the body positions that I wanted for these paintings. Because I think it is important in female sexuality, because you know. It, we are sexual beings as well. It's not just men. We are allowed to have all of
Absolutely.
these feelings, and to own that without any form of shame, which I think has happened for so long. And I think it's important for artists like yourself, like myself, and all this to have those conversations with our art, because if we don't, then it still remains hush.
Exactly. And I mean, in this modern era, I feel like it's not as, scandalous to
Mhm.
do it. Like there's so many like really prominent galleries and museums that showcase more on the sexuality work. And I think that's important. But, there's so many conservatives out there that would look at a work and be like, that's not for me, that's not for me. And or just like, don't look at that to their kids if they're walking by. But
Mhm.
I've got nude paintings all over my house. Like my kids have grown up with this. I have two boys, they're 5 and 7. They're so used to seeing bodies and female bodies at that. I don't have, sorry to the guys, I don't have any male nudes. But wouldn't that be interesting? But anyway,
Yeah.
I feel like it's just important to teach my kids that yes, this is a natural thing and
Mhm.
it's not anything to be fearful of. Like,
Yeah.
let's take away that whole fear wall that people put up, against nudes or sexuality, and like, let's talk about it and have it at the forefront.
Yeah, and make it not destigmatized, but what's the word I'm looking for? Where mm, what's the word I'm looking for? Where it's just natural. You're right. It's just part of our
Mhm.
everyday. Everybody has a body, male, female, whatever. We all have the same body parts. They all just look different. They all just look
Absolutely.
different. And so I
Mhm.
think it's definitely, and if you walk through, are you gonna hide your kids' eyes? Like if you walk through a museum of like, say you're in Italy or the Louvre or, the Met or wherever, and you see all these classical paintings of these nude bodies or the sculptures, you're just gonna be like, no, don't look at it, you
I
know?
know, like what a disservice to your child by doing that. Like they're missing out on so much history and the importance of it.
Hmm.
That would just really bother me if I ever saw that.
Yeah.
So
So
we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna talk
no,
about that.
yeah. So yeah, no, I have nude paintings all over my house too, of from different artists and myself, and
Hmm.
and same way when my little boy grows up, it's just going to be part of our everyday. So something that you brought up that I think is, I think we kind of already touched on it, but I just want to potentially dive into it just a wee bit more. So in your bio, you say, you have a deep passion for the craft and fiber arts, particularly working with yarn, a medium often associated with women. So when you say associated with women, how does that affect, the themes that you do and your subject matters more when you decide like to work on a series or a painting?
I guess I feel empowered knowing that there's so much history, like deeply rooted in using yarn in particular, um, crocheting and just weaving. Like that's been such a aspect to the history of women. I know men do that as well in this modern era, but the origins are there with women. And I took weaving in college and I just loved it so dearly. And just what we can do to create with our hands and the fabrics of our lives. And just there's so much history behind it that women originated. And I just love that and feel so connected to the material. But your question was, how does that inform my My subject matter?
Yeah, like how do you, knowing that like that's kind of at the forefront of like using it, like does that affect like the theme or the subject matter that you end up using for your paintings?
Absolutely. So, I have had series in the past that are so feminine, where it's female subject matter, female sexuality subject matter. But then I also have these more nature-based series where I'm really striving for that juxtaposition of hard and soft. So I do like a lot of cacti. Like cacti are phallic, they just have like, these male kind of forms to them, but how can I soften that? How can I bring, the female perspective to something so hard? And so I do um, yarn cacti. I do geodes that, they're like really hard stones, but I love like showing the layers. And I feel like there's so many layers that nature implores, but also females have within our core. And, that helps me in some of my past series to identify like my own layers and put those at the forefront. And I'm just linking all of this together, like how closely related females are with nature and by using this material. It's just all connected. And I'm so obsessed with it all. And, I'm always looking for ideas on how to continue on this path. And what my next course I feel would be, how can I do this in a more immersive, conceptual atmosphere? I do have experience creating immersive work, but on this quest to show and unveil all the cores that Mother Nature implores, but also in our female existence and put it at the forefront. I just want to challenge myself, and I'm excited to have the time right now to finally get to. I've been pretty busy all this year until now. I'm just finally clearing my schedule with commissions, so I can start identifying some ideas and hopefully going for it the rest of this year with that.
That's really cool. I can't wait to see what you come up with. And I think it is so important. Yeah, like obviously artists, we like to make money, but sometimes
Absolutely.
it's kind of a good thing. But we do need that quiet time. We do need that time off to be able to stop and think and be able to put these new concepts, we have to be able to explore and play, so that we can bring new works and new stories and ideas to the world.
Absolutely. And I'm always thinking, and like, not only do I think about my dreams, as we get old, it's harder to like really remember these dreams, but it's just like glimpses that like pop in my brain. But I take those glimpses and then I'm more like daydreaming in my old age. Like I think about things like where I'm just like in almost like a meditation stance. And um, that's a new thing for me. I started doing yoga like the past couple of years where I'm like really slowing things down so I can like have this self-care and self-time that I never gave myself before in my 20s and 30s. And so I think it's important to take that time. And I really do try to like reflect on these daydreams that I have, and try to write everything down. And if I don't, I've got my husband who's always like just my go-to memory box. I'm like, what was that thing? He's like, oh, blah, 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 blah. Because I'm always like, I've got mom brain. So I'm like, what was that I was just about to say? Or what am I talking about? Like I feel like
Yeah,
you could relate to this. And my
100%.
kids are 5 and 7. So I guess I just have perma mom brain and I'm just, I'm dealing with that. That's just what you got to deal with, I guess, in this situation. Like there's nothing changing. I guess it doesn't go back, unfortunately.
Oh,
But
good to know. Good to know.
yeah.
So, quick question for you. Are your dreams in color or black and white?
They're always in color. Like I don't think I can see in things in black and white, or I've never had that. It's always been so vibrant. And I just am so obsessed with color, and color just, it's just, I want it everywhere. And
Yes.
if you see my house, like there's not a blank wall. If there was, I would feel uncomfortable. Like something's not right here. You know,
Yeah.
I have a fun fact that my house was featured on an HGTV program, and they did a whole renovation and they staged it, and it looked, clean and modern, how that usually goes. But there was like only one or two artworks on the wall, and I need like
You're just like
so
twitching.
much. Yeah,
Twitching.
yeah. I'm like, okay, this is great. This is modern. This is like a really clean, beautiful atmosphere. But I definitely once that crew left, I like hung a million works on the wall.
Yeah.
And I feel so much better. So yeah, just I can't have like blank spaces. There has to be color. Just where I'm walking through the hallway and I'm like, I can just feel this energy, and that's what I feel color provokes.
100%. So, question, what HGTV show was it?
It's Renovation Impossible, season
Okay.
1, episode 8. For anyone that wants to check it out, our episode was the season finale episode. So hopefully it
Season one,
entertains you. You'll
episode
see how
8.
many times I blink because I blink 10,000 times a second. So, but first and foremost, check out the house and then think about the blinking later.
So, okay, I love that you add color. So that's one of my things about. Sorry, I love HGTV. Like I love Property Brothers, but you know what irks me? And I don't know if this irks you too. I don't know how much HGTV you watch, but it really bothers me when they put like the same exact painting in all of the houses, and it's just like a blank neutral painting with like one line of something. And I was like, no, no,
Yeah, or the walls are gray. That's something or like everything is gray. It's like
or
gray on
everything is
gray and gray.
white.
Yeah,
Everything
yeah.
is white, and I'm like a twitch. I'm like, no more white kitchens, please.
I
Um,
know. It's I guess, a very popular trend. But you can at least like um get it really pumped up with artwork on the walls. Like you'll have
exactly.
the gray wall. So we've got the gray walls now. I'm okay with it because I've completely transformed it with 10,000 artworks I've collected over the years from local to regional to international artworks. I don't really hang too much of my work on the walls because I'd rather see others and just implore like the value of others' artworks. But I do have a few, like from my college days. All of the nude paintings are all surrounding my house with the
Mhm.
glitter nail polish. That's important too.
Mhm. I really am sorry. So I just real quick. The Lego penis, was this an actual painting? Like you painted Legos or were you actually assembled with Legos? I just need
Yeah, so
clarification.
yes, on that one, that was one of my very early works in drawing and painting at UNT. But I did a Lego penis paint on, it was not painted, it was constructed by Legos, but on a painted surface, on a painted canvas.
Okay, okay, okay.
And so it was attached. And so that's how all of my works are. Like I attach the material to the surface. So I either use wood or canvas. But I predominantly love wood because I love just the natural aspect and just getting in the thick of working with natural materials. And I have another random fact.
Go for it. I
So,
love
yeah, so I have a buttload of yarn that I've collected. Okay, so I met my husband almost 10 years ago. And his grandmother had a crochet factory. And so in marrying my husband, something that fell onto me was inheriting all of her yarn from the crochet factory. So, and what's funny? It's still never enough. Like in my brain, I'm like, I need a specific color that's missing. So I have to go out and source that. But I have so much yarn that is historical, to be honest. Like a lot of it is from
That's really
the
cool.
80s. And pulling open these like old pattern bags that are meant to
Yeah.
be creating vests for very 80s looking women that are in the pictures. I love doing that. I post those pictures of those 80s ladies all over my fridge because I just love that look, and maybe that's what I'm going to look like in a few years, who knows. But I have so much yarn that I've collected from that my in-laws have brought me from that factory, and they still have more in storage, and I accept it all. Like I have every color you can ever imagine in a huge locker over here, and there's so much. So I mean, I don't know about like the whole meant to be scenario that people say, but maybe it
It's just
was.
meant,
Who
this
knows?
was meant to be.
I
It's
think
funny.
so.
I think so too. I actually worked for when I was back home in Central Oregon in Sisters. I worked at our local quilt shop, but then they also had a yarn side, and I was in charge of I was the buyer for the yarn side. So now like my yarn brain is going for it. Like, what is the and I think I have some yarn that I'm probably not going to use, so I might give it to you because I've held on
Okay,
to
I'll
it for
take it.
years. So it's just like some of it I might hold on to because I'm like, I still might knit that scarf. We'll see, or that hat. Um,
Of course, yeah.
right. There's always those future projects that's been in there for 10 years. Um what is the makeup of the yarn? Like, is it wool? Is it alpaca? Is it acrylic? Are they blends? Sorry, the
Yeah,
yarn
so
person inside me wants to know.
honestly, I have every variety, every texture, every width. I have everything from, embroidery string to the thickest yarn possible
Mhm.
and everything in between. So it's just I've got it all. If anyone ever needs to look at yarn, to analyze it, to do a science experiment on it, to, have whatever, to want to see every single texture, I've got it. So I love it all. I traditionally don't like to work on with the smaller widths,
Yeah,
um, mainly because they are so time consuming. Like my work is already very time consuming in general to create. So I kind of favor using more thicker textures. But I like a juxtaposition of thin and thick, to be honest. Like I've
yeah,
got like a bunch of work back in the background here where I use
yeah.
both. And I think it just creates like a depth and dimension that I really appreciate in the finished works.
I think that's really cool. And yeah, I was gonna say, it was like you sometimes you do need that to be able to add that depth, that texture in there, and that's really cool that you do that. So, sorry, another question that I'm sure most like a consumer would want to like, how do you attach it? Is it like glue? Do you stitch it on? Do you like poke holes like to almost like weave it on, like tack it on? How do you get it on there?
Yeah. So in my early days, I was like, I'm only allowed to use Elmer's craft glue. That's it. You're only allowed to use that. You're in the craft. Like this, you're in the craft world and you're only allowed to do that. So in college, like I only did Elmer's, right? But
Mhm.
I have experimented over the years and, I actually use a great number of glues, depending on exactly what surface I'm using or the edges require a little bit more, I guess, intensive glue just for security and sustainability. And so I do a lot of different glues that focus on the whatever it is I'm using my surface, and then how to seal it and make it sustainable for life. That's also really important. So I've just gone through an exploration on that. And then I Scotch guard everything because that's really important. I don't want dust, embedding itself in the work and then, the work being compromised in any way. So over the last millions of years, I've really been on an exploration on how to like really secure it in the perfect way. Those Elmer's days are behind me. I mean, no offense to Elmer's, but if you want something sustainable, it probably needs a little bit extra zhuzh. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, you've elevated it. You've elevated it. I love that. Um, so okay, so I know in the introduction I said that you were German born, but before we jumped on, you're like your family isn't really from Germany. Your parents were in the military and they met and you just happened to be born in Germany.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I was stationed, or not, I was stationed. My parents were stationed in Nuremberg, Germany, and I was born on a military base, as was my older sister. We lived there for a few years, and then we moved all over the place as military families do. And then we ended up in Fort Worth, Texas, where I went to school, grew up, yada, yada, until I moved out and went to UNT. And then now I've been in Dallas for 15 years now.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, um, have you traveled? Have you gone back to Germany? Have you traveled overseas any to like experience like, hey, this is where I was born?
Yeah, going to Germany is absolutely on my bucket list because I want to see where I was born. I have a fear that I lost my very German birth certificate. So that makes me feel really depressed because that seems irreplaceable. Like
I
how
think
do
you
you
could
get
get that
that?
back. I think you can. I think there's a way.
Yeah, there could possibly be, but
Yeah.
we'll just pretend that I have not lost that. But yes, I have been to Spain. I love it so much. I hope to explore multiple other countries in the future when my kids are older and could potentially take them. But I would say like Spain is where I can see myself retiring. I think
Me too.
we're living in an era in the US where it's work, 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 work. Where's the break? And we've got
Hmm.
kids. It's like there's no break, right? And so I really appreciate the way of life in Spain. And we spent 2 weeks there and decided we're retiring there. Um, when the retirement era comes, whatever that looks like. But I definitely like I get very goal driven. And so that's my goal. And I'm sticking to it. Like, I'm like, okay, A, B, C, D, we got to do those steps to get there and we're going to do it.
That's awesome. So what part of Spain?
So I love Madrid. I love Barcelona, but I need more time to explore and find like my favorite. There was we explored so much throughout those communities, and just each of those areas are just different from each other. But
Hmm.
I don't know. I love like being able to sleep in, go into different bars or restaurants, and you're immediately served tapas, and you can just there's just like such a sense of community there. People stay up late. People eat together really late. Um, of course, the siesta, taking that break in the middle of the day, like how important is that? And why can't we do that here? I wish I could
Agreed.
mimic that in my life, but we're not there yet, but hopefully one day we could. And, the United States could potentially like follow those tracks. And I don't know if that would ever happen. People are just so opposite here, but
Yeah.
I hope that more and more people can like, see that kind of way of life and like respect it and want to try it on this end of the hemisphere.
Yeah, totally. I did a summer abroad, um, in Barcelona one summer. I think it was 18 or 19, and it was magical. I want to go
Isn't
back.
it
So
though?
it
I
really is. There's just
know.
something about you're right. It's like the culture, the tapas, the sangria, the food, but then also just the history, the
Absolutely.
art
Like the
history
old
there.
streets. Yeah. Like every building is historic. You can feel the history. If you ever take a tour, you can like learn the history and how,
Hmm.
different countries have come in and taken over and what they have left behind. And it just kind of transforms these spaces. And it's just so much to enjoy and just take all in. And like, I love the aspect of the history that is embedded in these countries. And the US is a pretty young country compared to all of these. So, we're building our history and hopefully we're building it in the right ways. That's my dream for the future of the US.
Yeah. So it's just one thing about Spain that now that I'm thinking about like something that you said earlier about the nature and the woman's body and how Mother Nature connects, it really that also reminds me a lot about Barcelona in its sense with Gaudi and the architecture and how everything
Yes,
that like he created, there was no real straight lines. Everything, all of his buildings have these beautiful natural curves to it because it mimics nature and the woman's body and the form and everything. Maybe that's why we like that city so
exactly.
much.
I think so too. And like thinking about my work, like I don't really use straight lines. I use organic shapes in everything. And so I love Gaudi so much. Like just like it feels like dripping off, like just these beautiful shapes and forms. And you don't see that very often, but it seems so rigid and straight. And when you're living in a city, you're just like seeing all of this like very rigid straight buildings and you're not seeing like the organic forms oftentimes that I feel like you do really get to experience in Spain.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm really inspired by Gaudi, to be honest. Not that I've ever thought about that, but yeah, I really do think I could, like, even reflecting in my works now.
Yeah.
He's such a
Just
spectacular person and artist.
he really is, really is. Sorry, I know that was like a huge tangent, but I was just like, I had to connect those dots. Um, so do you typically work in one-offs or do you work in collections? Like how does an idea form and how does it grow for you in that sense?
Yeah, so if I'm asked to do a show where it's like a one piece show, that's a one off. But I always try to have it as part of the current series that I'm working on in some ways. So I tend to only work in series. That's kind of like I build a series, and like if I finish 8 pieces, I feel really strong that I've kind of gone through the course of what my brain is telling me this series needs to be. But yeah, and then I want to move on as quickly as I can, which is not quick because there's so many other things that are going on in my world, to the next one. And so, I have a lot of ideas brewing in my brain, but it's like I can only do one thing at a time. But yeah, series is how I can really develop my ideas um, that I thought about or dreamt about, and get them all out and out of my brain so I can like think about the next one. And when I can surround myself with that series, it does really empower me to move on to the next thing. Okay, what did this series serve? How did I, resolve the problem that I was trying to resolve, and how can I move into the next piece? So yeah, I think it's really important for me to work in series rather than just like a one-off situation. But I think it's also fun to do a one-off, like I did a piece for the Bathhouse El Corazon exhibit. So I did something that was like, I've never done something like that before, where I worked on a anatomical heart piece, and I had all of the veins in the heart, as like loose strings of yarn coming off that, and that was really fun. I like these one-off things. I've done a lot, like especially for Art Conspiracy, and back in the day I did every single one of those, and try to like just explore different themes. There's a lot I've done where it has been one-offs that I feel were very effective and also really fun, because when you're asked to do something that you don't normally do, like that's fun and challenging to challenge your brain in that way as an artist. So I certainly do have a lot of fun doing those one-off things for sure.
Nice. So what are you currently working on? Are you working on a certain
So
collection right now or
yes. So yeah, like I'm really interested in non-traditional shapes. So rather than like a square or rectangular canvas or, wood surface, like I really do want to start this whole like cutout series. Thinking about organic shapes and like how important and unique they are. We always see these standard shapes, but like I love cutouts, and I just love that I can like create my own shape and put that on the wall, and like it's it's really special and unique for me. And I think that, talking about Gaudi, like that's bringing that back into play, like just like the focus on like non-tradition and like getting away from what everybody else does. And yes, of course there's a lot of people, artists, that do non-traditional shapes, but like how can I expand upon that and what I do, and how can I come off the wall with these shapes as well? So thinking more on the conceptual aspect of it too. So now I have time to like kind of dive into that, and I'm excited to see what I can get going with that for sure.
that's exciting. I can't wait to see because I feel and I don't know if like I said, it's this new I don't want to say it's a new era, but I feel that there is a lot of art now that is having these conceptualized sculptural aspects to the world. But even my own, like I started making my last piece in this collection. It's series that I'm working on. It's sculpted. It's coming off the painting with the raw
Mm-hmm.
canvas and textures and whatnot. And so I'm seeing it more and more. And I think artists are finally being able to say, I'm allowed to step outside of the box. A painting isn't
Mm-hmm.
just paint in a square canvas.
Exactly. And just rooting back to my college days when I did all the things I wasn't supposed to do, but I still got really good grades, you know? Like I
You're
feel
like,
like
I
my professor
passed.
my professors like expected that of me. Like, why do you have to like just fit inside of a box? Like, especially artists, like how can you get out of a box? How can you get out of that traditional box that you're seeing everywhere and try something completely different?
Yeah. And I think it's important for the art community and also just for the people who are artists, to be able to look at and experience art in a new way, like for the consumer end of it,
Hmm.
you know,
Absolutely.
because it's just like, you think about go back into interior design or people trying to buy art. Um, there's always just been like, oh, I'll go to the store and buy this, or that's all they've known. But now we're presenting us as artists, we get to say, okay, we are here to present a new wave of being able to have this art in your home. It's almost like having, you go to a museum or wherever where they have more of an installation art piece, and it's just like we're dialing that back to a sense where it can still be on the wall, but still have this really cool effect to it. Does that make sense?
It really does. And, I think that I work for an art and technology organization, Aurora, and we focus on, bringing art to people where they're at. So a lot of unexpected places, outdoors. And it's almost like people don't feel like they could purchase. There's like a conception that you can't purchase digital art to hang in your house or to show in your house, but you can. And we're introducing our patrons to the fact that they can showcase digital work in their homes and make it their own. Whether it's buying, a projector and having it placed in your home and just having like a series of thumb drives where you can interchange the works depending on what you're doing in your home, if you're entertaining or whatever that looks like. Technology is really changing, and it's like getting people more comfortable to experimenting and wanting to try new things in their home that can transform their space.
100%. And I think you're right. Technology is, it's like you either love it or you hate it. But I think that once we start embracing it in a sense where it's just like, okay, well, how can I make this work for me and still, you know, you know, me be comfortable with it, but also be able to be more open-minded in a sense.
Absolutely. And I think we'll get there. I mean, especially with technology like moving as quickly as it is, more and more galleries and museums are showcasing technology-based works. And as I mentioned earlier, fibers works. And like, how can we combine the two? I actually, working for a tech-based organization for the past 4+ years, started using AI in my work to create my source material for a lot of my pieces because I was like, why not use the technology that serves me?
Well,
And, there's a lot of fear around AI, like stealing art and all of this, or people, all the different fears
yeah.
that people have around that. I don't really think like an AI could ever mimic what I do exactly. So I feel pretty good about what I do and using AI to help me get the weird stuff that's in my brain out in front of me. And it works so well for me because I can say like I can prompt it to say exactly what weird stuff I'm like is in like the way back there. And I see it on the screen and I'm like, oh yes. And I just love that I can work and like collaborate with AI in such a great way that is so useful to me and really helps inform my work and my subject matter. So it's really fun for me. I love doing it.
I think so. I think it's important to obviously AI will never replace our brains in that sense. That level of weird, that psyche that we as
Absolutely.
artists have,
Yes.
it will never replace that. And I think because like exactly to what you're using it for, you're using it as a tool to help you work through your ideas and your concepts to know you're
Hmm.
still telling it exactly what it is that you're looking, that you're just getting all of that out. But then you're taking that information and you're still turning it into something else. You're just
Exactly.
using it
Yes.
as
Yeah.
like, it's almost as if it's like your sketchbook.
Mhm.
Like you're sketching out your idea, but you're just using words and technology to help you process the information.
Absolutely. And it is such a great tool. And I hope that more and more artists can, you know, start to see it that way. And that kind of fear is sort of dissipating around it, because it is, you know, I do think one day that AI robots will come for us. And like, that's just a whole separate subject matter. The way I'm using AI is so wonderful. And I hope that more and more artists will see the value in it the way I did.
Yeah, of course. And I think that, you know, uh, I use Chat GPT every day. Every day helps me
Hmm.
organize my life just a little bit more. And, you know, it helps me to be a little bit more eloquent with my words and like writing a little bit sometimes. And then obviously I take it and edit it and still make it turn it into my own. So I think that there is a balance between you know using it as a tool but then still using your own thoughts and your own brain to um make it still your own. I think that's the best,
Absolutely.
instead of just
Yeah.
relying on it
Mhm.
as a crutch.
Absolutely. Yeah. I could never do that. I mean, my brain is really weird. So it's like the things I'm prompting, you know, I don't know. There might be one person in the world that would prompt the same way I do, but I don't know. I just think it's like the weirder the better. It's so intriguing and so interesting to see what it comes up with. And I'm like, that's in there. You
It,
got me. You get
it,
me. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
I totally get it. I get it. My brain is just as fantastical and weird, and so I understand, and that's you know from one artist to another. So, Cori, where can our audience find your work if they want to look at your wonderful fiber arts and if they wanted to purchase something?
Absolutely. So I have my website, corigodfrey.com. You can follow me on Instagram, Cori Godfrey Art, Facebook, Cori Godfrey Art. I have some work that's always at Kettle Art in Deep Ellum.
Hmm.
So if you want to see something at any time, they're open Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays from 12 to 5 or by appointment.
Hmm.
And then I have some shows in the works for the fall, and I'm already lining up my 2025 calendar with solo and group shows. So it's weird to think about 2025 in May, but here we are.
I think
Really excited about it.
yeah, I think as artists, like people don't realize that we as artists, we have to think galleries and we as artists, we think that far ahead. It's not like,
For
oh,
sure.
put it in the next month and here you go. So it's like, no, it's like it takes a year of planning and producing and all of that. So I will make sure to include all of your information and in the show notes and whatever those fall shows are, I'll if you have the information, I'll also include that in the show notes. But if not, everyone go and follow Cori on Instagram, look at her website and find out more about where she'll be showing so you can see her work. So thank you so much, Cori, for coming on the show today. It was a pleasure to talk to you. I really enjoyed this conversation a lot.
Thank you, Jillian. I really did too. And I cannot wait to meet you and hang out with you in person and talk about all the weird stuff in our brains.
Yes. All the weird feminine women's body art and all the natural aspects of nature and beauty.
Yes, it's so spectacular and beautiful.
Yeah, it sure is. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that, my friends, wraps up another colorful episode of The Artist Stoop. A huge thank you to our incredible guests for sharing their art and stories. If you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on the next Stoop chat. And don't forget to spread the love. Share your favorite episodes with fellow art enthusiasts and let's build this community together. Connect with us on social media at JGuze Studio and Jillian Zepeda Art for behind the scene peeks, artist spotlights, and a sneak peek at my own art. Until next time, stay inspired, stay curious, and keep that creative fire burning. This is Jillian Zepeda signing off from The Artist Stoop. And remember, the world is your canvas, so paint it vividly.